this game's a big conversation with the college football players. When you look at both of these teams, do you think despite the outcome that happens tomorrow, do one of these teams or maybe even both belong in the conversation?
I think the outcome of this game dictates what happens. And it's just the idea that I think we've had so many years now in a row where the SEC has been worthy of the spots and the other conferences haven't lived up to what they were supposed to be, that we've got accustomed to that being the norm. And I get it, everybody's down here, national championships, what everybody wants to say, I understand that. But we actually have some qualified other people to do it this year. So I think this outcome is very, very important in dictating who gets into the playoff.
Can you talk about the transformation of Jaylen Milroe from week 2 up to this point?
I think it's there's a lot, man. I really think he got humbled in that Texas game. Being there for that game, him throwing the pick, Texas always dictating what they wanted to do after that in that game, and then whatever happened the following week. But I think there was a big humbleness there. I think there was a buy-in also. You got to think about it. You lose the number 1 draft pick in the draft. You lose other pieces. You get a new offensive coordinator in there. That's a learning curve. And these fan bases, especially in this conference, they're spoiled. And I hate to say it, but the only way he was going to get better was to get live game reps. And that's hard to do when you're trying to chase a national championship and you have expectations from a fan base that aren't realistic. And that's what happens a lot across the country now with the way people are expecting your team to win. So it's been so impressive. You could see gradually him get better with his accuracy. I think against LSU, it really clicked when the run. Down and distance, 3rd down. All right, I'm going to take this. I got to see him right here. But it's been awesome to watch, and it's because he's taken the most of his opportunity. And as rough as it was in the beginning, you got to be happy with what you got so far.
Could you also speak on the development of Carson Beck from game 1 to now?
No doubt. It's been awesome because when you look at, everybody talks about the expectations, right? And Georgia spent how long looking for somebody to play quarterback? Stetson comes in, boom, they go. 2 back-to-back, right? And I just thought it was, I thought the fan base was nervous because Carson Beck's not Stetson Bennett. Just look at him, And then to see him, those are some big, I know Stetson's not the biggest guy, but those are some big shoes to step into. And again, with the expectation of your fan base now, that's what he was expected to do. But to see him, again, they get transfer receivers in. You don't have Brock Bowers, but to see him keep getting better and better has been awesome. I noticed him growing up at Auburn in the second half. Like, that's where we found out. You're on the road in the SEC in a big-time environment, and you bring your team back. That's big boy stuff. So I think ever since then, but again, he needed that opportunity. You can't do that stuff in practice. So that's what really stuck out to me is that Auburn game, and then he's just ascended since then.
As you look at the Georgia defense trying to slow down Jaylen Milroe, what do you think is the biggest key there?
I keep bringing it up, just watching the tape. I go back to what Alabama did against Jaden Daniels. He hit him over the top a couple times, but that's what you got to do against Bama. But when you watch that pressure, they didn't overrun the pocket. They kept him there, and that's what I expect Georgia to do, especially after last week, watching what Jaylen did, getting out of that pocket, seeing the creases in different pressures. I think it's going to be a control. Kirby's done this with prior defenses against mobile quarterbacks, and I think Georgia could play their style of defense and do what they want to do on the defensive side if they know where the quarterback's going to be, right? And I think you do that with a control rush. And I think Georgia could be all right getting pressure with 4. They're phenomenal on the back end. I actually think they have an advantage when you look at the defensive back end personnel with the Bama receivers. So a lot's on Milroe's plate. I think Alabama knows that, but I also think Georgia wants that to be the case. And I think a controlled rush like that and having gap responsibility when you know it's a passing down, that's the thing. And then it starts on 1st and 2nd down, making you always play better defense when you're in a predictable situation, right? So I think it starts that with the controlled rush.
On the other side, too, Bama's front unit for defense is one of the more premier ones in recent grow. How does that develop a challenge for an offense like Georgia, who's very explosive, but they're rallying points up per game? I think it's like 40 points per game they're averaging.
Yeah.
What kind of matchup is like that?
I think it's an advantage for Alabama. because Carson Beck, we talked about Jaylen and what he does and the problems he does because he's off script and, doing his thing. When guys aren't open, he can make a decision and go. Carson Beck's not that guy. He's trusting his pocket. And when you look at Alabama coming in, they know they got a stationary quarterback, and they have two phenomenal defensive ends. Now, Georgia's been way better on the offensive line with Mims back. He came back against Ole Miss and being there. Notice seeing him, that's a guy you can't miss. But I like Alabama's matchup because I do like their personnel on the back end and the injuries. We don't know who's going to be at receiver for Georgia. So I look at Alabama having the advantage there, just knowing you have two consistent guys. And you saw them. That's the way they got back in the game last week. Turner and Braswell have been phenomenal, and it helps you. Your secondary guys know they don't have to cover for as long if they know they got guys that can get to the quarterback. So I like that. I like that advantage for Alabama, or I consider it an advantage. I don't want to put words in other people's mouths.
Alabama back end, the secondary that you talk about there. What is the key to stopping or slowing down Brock Bowers?
Well, I think what Bama does on the back end a lot better than most is they have better personnel, first of all. And when you talk about that, all right, how many guys can I keep on the field, whether I'm playing nickel, whether I'm playing dime, different or first down, base personnel. And those guys, Malachi Moore's a ton of experience, Kool-Aid, a ton of experience. Downs has been absolutely phenomenal as a young player. That's a guy that I look to see does he get a little too aggressive. But Bowers is so tough because based on the personnel, you don't know where he's going to be. So you can't just say, all right, you got him the whole game. That's not going to happen. Georgia's praying for you to do that because now they can just run him off and get other guys open. And then you commit two guys to him. So I think it's just not letting anybody behind you to start on the edges and then basically just having multiple eyes on them. It's a lot easier said than done. Plenty of teams over the last 3 years have had opportunities and it hasn't gone well, but it just talks about how special of a player he is. He's been my favorite player to watch in college football the last 3 years, and knowing what he's done, his story coming from California, and just the difference he is. Like, there's just, when you talk about this game, there's a bunch of difference makers. He might be the number one guy that's the biggest difference maker in the whole game.
Stanford Steve, so this is a Pac-12 related question, but it has to do with resumes. Oregon is a team that sits above Texas and Alabama. Yep. What do you like about Oregon's resume, and why do they have a right currently by the community center, at least here, to be ranked where they are?
I don't like anything about their resume compared to Alabama or Texas. I really don't.
Thank you.
When you look at it, I was there for the Utah game, and I get it. Utah has played off of past great teams, and they have a name. They've made a mark for themselves. That's credit for them. But when you look at the tape and you watch the personnel, that's not a typical Utah team. And when you compare the Oregon thing to Texas and Alabama, they don't have it. Well, now Oregon State stayed ranked, so they have one top 20 win. And I just don't think. I said it Halloween night when it happened. They should not have been the top ranked first one-loss team. And the committee has not. I don't think they've been consistent with it because they said Ohio State was ranked when they were one. They were ranked one based off resume. Well, then why didn't you rank the one-loss teams off of resume? Knowing that Texas had the best win the whole time since week 2 going to Tuscaloosa. So I'm with you. I haven't agreed since they ranked the one-loss teams Halloween night.
And to follow up on that, with Florida State now without George Travis, are they a top 4 team? And I kind of wonder because they were trailing North Alabama 13-0, and I think if Alabama was trailing Chattanooga 13-0, it seems like they'd be held to a different standard. But your thoughts on Florida State?
You have to grade Florida State with who's playing quarterback right now. And they scored 52 points when he came in the game. So that game's that. Last week, no matter what it is, that's still a damn hard place to go play in the swamp on a Friday night. And what I'll say is I'm still assessing Florida State. If they come out and roll Louisville, which no one is expecting, but if they come out, that's pretty good. That's a pretty darn good resume, and that's as impressive as you could be. You go back and look at 2015 when Ohio State got in. Why did they get in? Because Cardell Jones came in, didn't look like a backup. They scored 59 points in the Big Ten title game, and then you had 2 Big 12 teams just hanging out over here. And it's like, whoa, what did Ohio State just do? Maybe it doesn't matter who their quarterback. They have enough great personnel. Yeah, we'll take Ohio State. So I think Florida State, the judgment based on them is still should be open and give them tomorrow night and what they look like.
The Georgia-Alabama storyline, it seems to be never ending, and even though Georgia is back-to-back national champions, it still feels as if they're the little brother in this rivalry. Could a Georgia win tomorrow change that narrative forever?
Not forever. Nothing in my mind will change forever. I don't think they're the little brother anymore. Being there for the Ole Miss game, and then that was the first time in a while, you could see how cranked up things are in Athens. They know what they got. Talking to people around the program, they're very, very confident coming in. And on the other side, Alabama it doesn't happen. 4 times since 2010 that they've been an underdog, and every time Georgia's been the other team as the favorite. So that storyline right there is everything everybody wants. Georgia fans always saying, what about us, or you're the favorite now. And then Alabama saying, oh, you're down on us right now? We're the underdogs? We love that opportunity. It doesn't happen much. So it's everything on the line we have and what we want. And that's why I do, going back to your first question about what's at stake here, I do believe this is an elimination game. I really do.
With that being said, too, the storyline between Kirby and Coach Saban, too, how is the two coaches coaching like that be able to rise up and build programs like that? Why is it so good for college football, not just the SEC?
Well, I think it sets a standard for what everybody's trying to get to. Look at Dan Lanning. You know, he learns from Georgia, and now he's out in Eugene, Pacific Northwest. He knows what he has to get to be relevant here. And then you saw him come here last year. That team wasn't ready, and I think you saw that team grow, and I think he used that as motivation. There was no, coaches say tape don't lie. There was no line from that tape that they got beat 50-something to nothing. Like, they knew what they were up against, and they knew what they have to get to. And now when you talk to him this year, he feels like they've taken the steps necessary to be there. So I think going back to your question about Kirby and Nick, they've just put their teams and their programs at a place saying this is where you need to be. And going back to your thing about the SEC getting multiple teams in the playoff, they deserved it. That's where their teams were, and nobody else matched and tried and could get there. So that's why they were where are they supposed to be?